we're launching our first ever seminar event, the Fine Homebuilding Summit. Join us October 2nd through the 4th in Southbridge, Massachusetts, as 12 of the building industry's most notable experts will offer more than 50 hours of presentations. Our goal? To explore advanced design principles, discover cutting-edge construction materials, and share trusted techniques. Space for this event is limited and expected to sell out fast. Don't wait. Visit finehomebuilding.com/summit to pre-register. That's finehomebuilding.com/summit.
He's
landscaping.
Right. He was working on he was working on his front steps and walkway, and so
I can tell you it is so hard to work on a house with a little baby running around. It is just takes all your time.
I get it, yeah.
And
you look tired just saying it.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, a weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Design Editor Kiley Jacques.
Hello.
Editorial Director Justin Fink.
Hello.
And Producer Jeff Rose.
Hello.
You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Thanks for being on the show on short order, Justin.
Sure. I'm not really making fun of you, Kiley. I just thought
try something different.
I'm going to do the show in a different voice.
I didn't take it personally.
Oh my gosh. So we heard back from some listeners and regarding episode 191, you were talking about outsolation on a roof, and Matt mentioned zip bar sheathing. Just a quick note, zip bar is not certified for roofs. So sorry about that.
I thought you guys knew that.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I've heard of some people doing it. Huber frowns on it.
What about if you put it upside down?
No, it's, well, I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Why would you do that, though?
I don't know.
I think it really comes down to they just don't have a fastening schedule that they can easily say, all right, everybody go ahead. Here's the fastening schedule. I remember talking, I think it was Steve Basic I was talking to, whose engineer was trying to come up with, he was working with an engineer to try and come up with kind of something that he could consistently sign off on.
Yeah.
Because, once an engineer takes responsibility, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, you want a detail that's stamped.
Right. Right. So we're going to get there, though. I'm sure within a couple of years, it'll be on roofs.
My suspicion is so when you have cycling from low and high pressure, right, it could compress that foam. And then once those fasteners are loose, I think the potential for it to lift off in a wind event would be pretty great.
Yeah, but so screw it down.
You think that would help?
Why not?
I think the fasteners pulling through the material is the risk, not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, some kind of washer head
screws. Like it's not going to bite onto it?
Well, so when you have things bouncing up and down, the tendency is for the fastener head to get pulled through the material. So you don't want that. You want things to be stuck tight to the framing.
Makes sense.
He says he enjoys the podcast, though. Thanks, Paul. Ben wrote to us on 3 issues. Dear FHB crew, I've been listening to the podcast for a few months now and love it. I like the mix between what you all are doing, the listener comments on previous topics, and answering questions. I'm a general contractor that doesn't make a living as a general contractor. Can you understand what that means?
He says it. Makes him an advanced DIYer.
It makes him
a former contractor?
What did he say? I'm a contractor who doesn't make a living as a contractor?
Maybe he's bad at it.
I think it's a joke.
I think it's it's either he's bad at it or he's doing it part-time.
Okay. Maybe if you want to clarify later, we take that on, Ben. Thank you. In any case, I want to start off by saying I'm sorry for this letter and the number of things I am bringing up that I don't agree with you on.
I love how apologetic he is for disagreeing.
Nice person.
It's fine.
For
you can
real.
Disagree.
He says, for real, I swear I do like the podcast and all of you.
You made a powerful enemy today, Ben.
It's nice. So in episode 188, Matt has installed the roofing on his shed. Patrick made the comment that drilling the corrugated roofing in a stack would make a straight line of screws. I prefer Kyle from RR Building's technique. He uses an awl and punches his holes through multiple sheets at one time. His fear with drilling is the shaving scratching the paint on the steel. Totally legitimate concern.
Yeah, it's great. Great idea.
And even the chips can rust, even if they don't scratch the steel, and they'll leave rust stains. So it is a concern. I always brush them off as I'm installing them, but yeah, that's a concern.
Kyle is a good guy to follow if you're interested in pole barns and metal roofs and that kind of technology. He does it all day, every day.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Regarding when to do blower tests on new construction, Patrick stated that he would blower door test after sheeting, but before the windows. I think that doing a blower door test at this time would only show you're good at taping plastic to window openings, door openings, and the roof ridge. I do agree that if you could do it before drywall, but after mechanicals, that would be great. So what I'm saying is, yeah, you have to sheet over the windows and you cut them out later. This is giving you a baseline of how tight the envelope is with the expectation you're going to lose some of the air tightness when the windows go in.
I mean, was your point if you could only do it once?
No, I was saying you have to do it more than once.
Because that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
If you only had one shot at the blower door, when would you do it?
Well, there's only one answer, and that's when the house is done. But I don't think if
I don't know
you
if
have
that's the only answer.
Well, if you have a problem, it has to be tested for the IRC.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. I just meant personally. If I forget the IRC, if I wanted to know so that I could still have access to fix some things.
I think right after the mechanicals are in, the windows are in, but before you start insulating and sheetrocking.
Which is what he says here,
yeah.
Right. For the average mortal human, that's probably when you're going to make the most changes. For people who are trying to get below 0.6 ACH 50, maybe you'd want to do it at framing so you can get every little tiny nook and cranny.
I think with the 3 air changes, like most typical builders are going to have trouble if they have problems with the final blower door test. I think you need to test prior to fix the stuff you can before the drywall's up. I think you have to be a certified third party to do the test, right? Like you can't do your own blower door, right? I think it's up to the individual inspector, but I would say most would not want you to do your own. It would seem like a conflict.
It's still kind of rolling out, right? In a lot of places. To me, if I was building full time, I don't think I would hesitate for even an hour to buy my own blower door test.
Yeah,
kit.
What is it, $2,000?
Yeah. Throw it in the truck. Because it's not like it's super hard to use.
Don't throw it in the truck, please.
Throw it in the truck. And then you can just use it whenever you want to.
Does it require a lot of special training to figure out how to use it?
It's very easy.
Is it? Does it require a lot of math?
Nope.
The machine does the math.
It's a digital readout.
Okay. Matt said there were a lot of calculations.
Matt's a nerd.
But he would just make up calculations.
So perhaps the hardest thing is figuring out the cubic volume of the house, right? So you can express the results in air changes per hour, which is the thing everyone understands.
Right.
But if you have a really complicated house layout, doing that math is surprisingly frustrating because you can't really measure like high ceilings and stuff. Right. You have to use laser measuring devices and graph paper.
Nightmare.
It's not complicated math, but...
And if you had to just figure out CFM, some people want to read it in CFM instead of air changes, would you still have to do the calculations for that?
No.
Yeah. See, that makes more sense to me.
But it's also
a bigger number, so you have more nuance in a number instead of just a 2-digit kind of a thing.
There have been people who've been talking about changing the way we interpret building air tightness tests various ways, and for whatever reason, the air change thing has stuck around. I think it's because people cannot get their heads around it, right? It's not...
Seems like a good story idea.
The intricacies of blower door results.
All your options.
You having trouble sleeping at night? Or?
I was thinking we should assign that to Matt while he's away.
Yeah, it seems like a great Matt story.
I'm going to load him up.
Ben writes, regarding episode 190, to the guy with the siding made from a jet engine crating. Have you heard this question?
I have not.
I don't remember this one. I don't think I was here.
So this guy had what was a commercial building, and it's sided with these aluminum panels that were originally crates to hold jet engines.
Okay.
And it's coming off, and his question was, how do I better keep this attached to my building? And he said, can I use spray foam? And we're all like, well, that would probably work.
Yeah, but no.
So, to your point, please don't spray foam for strength, says Ben.
Yeah.
Patrick commented on how hard it is to get the foam off of building materials. It will not be an if it needs to be replaced, but when you have to remove the jet crate siding, and it'll be stuck to the foam, making it very hard to replace. I think you would be better off looking for a more conventional method of adding strength to the building, plywood or OSB on the inside, or maybe X bracing with 2x material at 45-degree angles between the existing framing, to name a few options. And maybe that was a miss, but I don't know. Spray foam's pretty good at fixing this guy's building. And
yeah, but I wonder what he did.
Well, hopefully he'll report back.
Yeah.
It just feels like and I've said this before, that we're headed to an interesting and annoying place with all of these adhesives and tapes and things for the remodeler that's going to follow after us and have to deal with this. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not going to...
It must be starting, if any of you are listening and have had to deal with a house that you're remodeling with closed cell spray foam or like a layer of Vicor on the roof or whatever, please let us know what that's like, because we can only imagine it's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, we've had, I'm sure you've come across it in limited situations, even having to fix a window you've already installed, like. It needs to get swapped for some reason. The window broke, and you need to swap it out for a warranty or whatever.
Just trying to reposition the Grace ice and water shield on a hot roof is like agony, right? You just have to. I
assume you guys can do all this stuff.
We can. It's just that it's not
hard.
So you contrast that with like an old wood window that is designed and built to be completely reversible and repairable. And then the stuff that we're doing now, which is like liquid flashing, tape, spray foam. It's made to like, sometimes it's made to stay tacky forever. Like in the case of Tremco acoustical sealant.
Yeah, the butyl sealants, Yeah, I've heard horror stories of contractors who have to go in and add a pipe or a wire where there was supposed to be one in a spray foamed house, and just the time it takes to scrape out a single stud cavity of foam,
sounds like awful work.
And it's probably not good for you to breathe that stuff.
You think?
Ben concludes by saying, please accept my apology for disagreeing with you all. And I would say, Ben, don't worry about it. Please keep up the good work. And if I'm wrong, please help me, guide me in the right direction. Well, I think he was right 2 out of 3 times.
Not
bad. So you've been busy working on the summit, Justin.
Yes, we're getting
our
close.
First one.
Yeah, we're getting super excited. I think I've talked about it on here a while back, but it's October 2nd through 4th. It's in Southbridge, Massachusetts. We all will be there. Jeff will be there.
I will.
Whether you like it or not, Jeff.
Are we recording podcasts there?
We're doing podcasts there. No. Oh yeah. We've got like a dozen really, really good speakers who are going to be presenting on all sorts of really cutting edge topics.
Have you heard
high performance building?
Have you heard the actual seminars titles and their syllabi for those things yet?
Yes.
And what do you think?
I'm basically designed a program that I want to see, so I'm excited about it.
That's awesome.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to hear some. So Peter Yost is going to open it up, and people who are not familiar with Peter Yost should just go type in his name because he's done everything, and he's qualified in every way to be teaching here. And he's doing his opening presentation on his predictions for what building will look like in, I believe it was 2039.
Oh, I love it.
How do you pick that date?
Which should just be really interesting.
Yeah.
20 years.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You might have trouble with that blower door, man. And I'm really excited to see, apparently Peter Yost also has an excellent, highly recommended class from a lot of people on the basics of building science.
That would be great.
That's just like the fundamental, if you understand these handfuls of principles, you can do anything with them. So
I better go to that.
I'm looking forward to that.
Better take some notes.
And Christine Williamson's going to be talking about stucco, which she titled... It was originally the coming stucco apocalypse, and then it became stucco no you don't.
It's a toss-up. I like them both.
Basically, we're all in a lot of serious trouble in terms of stucco problems coming down the pike.
In the Northeast, right?
And she's going to talk a lot about that.
That's something that you and I have talked about, and it's a deal.
It's something.
In 2039, they're going to be talking about these adhesive tapes and glues and such.
We will. We'll still be at this table. So that's just some of the topics. Air sealing, insulation. Mike Maines will be talking about the next generation of pretty good house. Ben Bogey and Mike Gurton will be there doing some hands-on demos. It's going to be super immersive, super cool.
And there's time to hang out together,
There's
right?
a lot of time to walk around, see the different vendors who are sponsoring there and setting up shop. 475 Building Supply, Tamarack Technologies, Rockwool, Type Bond. I mean, it's going to be all
these
sorts
companies that are associated with good building.
Yeah, Minutair. Yeah, this is going to be really cool stuff there to look at and put your hands on and touch and talk to people who know a lot about it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how do podcasters who are interested in attending register?
You can go to finehomebuilding.com and let's see, I guess you should go to /summit.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I was just there.
We were, if you have any trouble getting onto the page, I'm only thinking this because we had a glitch a couple of days ago. If you're on your mobile device, you might go to a desktop instead.
Or you could email the podcast and I'll try and help you out.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link on the Home Building /podcast page too.
Yeah. So One of those ways will get you
Or
there.
find us on social media. We got links everywhere.
You can also call.
Don't call us.
I never pick up my phone.
Yeah.
So you do anything at home? Have you finished your storm windows?
Well, it's not winter, so
Okay.
yeah, they're done. I'm thinking I want to get some. They are all done.
Did you spray them?
No, I hand painted them because at the time I didn't have room to spray all of them.
Dig it.
Plus, I had to. It didn't make sense for me to spray them because I had to put in all. It would have been a 2-step process of spraying them, glazing them, and then having to go back and
Yes.
spray the glazing. So I was like,
Yes.
well, I'm just going to hand paint them. They're all
Because you want the paint to lap onto the glass slightly.
Exactly. A lot of people don't realize that's where some of that seal comes from, is the paint bridging that gap and sealing it. You want it to be a little bit messy,
onto
the glass.
Yeah.
You take a razor blade and clean it up?
That's kind of, I'd like that method better than taping everything. You also, if you have a steady hand, you could just, cut a straight line.
Can you do that?
Within reason.
I'm terrible.
I usually have
I'm
a little
too
cleanup
shaky.
with a razor, and I just like that better.
Yeah.
It's like,
Imperfect.
do you want to be perfect up front, or do you want to come back after? And it's
Well, it looks hand done. And
That's right.
I think people like that.
so I want to get some more weather stripping for the windows I have not weather stripped yet, and I'm thinking about doing felt
Oh, cool.
because it has a little bit of breathability, and it's important to be able to get some condensation out from behind the windows.
How many windows did you do?
I don't know,
That sounds like a big project.
20 something.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
I was complaining about my 6 drawers.
Yeah, and it was
So
a
I
lot.
have one drawer to complain about.
And I'm wrapping up some built-ins right now for the one and only Rob Yeager. They're going to be going in about a week or so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've been
How big are the
having
boxes?
fun with that. They're 2 identical units, and it's base cabinets and then upper cabinet doors.
Glass or panels?
No panel, just regular shaker style doors.
Uh-huh.
No, pre-finished interiors. Outside is gray. So they're let's see. I think it's 89-inch ceiling height in his dining room, and they're 6 feet long each, and they flank a doorway.
Nice.
So yeah, they're big.
They're monsters.
Yeah.
Did he work on them with you? Or?
No.
Oh.
No, he's got
Paying you the
he's
big
got,
bucks,
He's
or
got a
what?
toddler running around, and he's got another one about to pop out. So
And
That
he's
sounds
doing
sharp.
lots of landscaping.
yeah, he's
landscaping.
Right. He was working on
Sodscape.
he was working on his front steps and walkway, and so
I can tell you it is so hard to work on a house with a little baby running around. It is just
get
that
it.
takes all your time.
I get it. Yeah,
And
You
like
look
you have
tired just saying it.
and I'm happy for the excuse to do a project.
Yeah.
to Yeah.
It's fun.
Probably running out of room in your own house.
I'm ready to get these things out of my shop. I,
I
will
bet.
tell you that.
'Cause dealing with big cabinets is really hard.
I'm like, so Rob, when are you gonna be ready? It's like another 2 weeks. I'm like, all right.
You should just have to deliver them
Yeah.
one day.
Well, they're coming now.
Put them on in the driveway. What have you been doing?
I've been in maintenance mode. I did a little topping off and grading of my problem area on my
Your driveway.
drive. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a chronic thing,
That is when you have a gravel driveway, it does require regular maintenance.
and especially when there's a turn and everybody's wheels.
Yeah, and you're in the lowlands, so
Yeah.
water pools.
Yep. So it's going to be an annual thing. I did try to fix the face of a drawer that snapped in half, and
So you pulled the front off?
I pulled the front and half of
You
it
brute?
came off.
Were you mad?
I don't know how this happened, quite frankly. It was very strange. So it's split, right? So half the face is still on, the knob is still on, and the upper half came off. So
Cool.
I thought, all right, well, I'll just wood glue it back together. But in that time, it seems to have grown an inch. So now the door doesn't shut. So now I think I'm going to remove the bottom half of it to plane both the broken halves
Yep.
and glue them back together.
Yes.
I need to take some material out.
Yeah, that'll
So
work.
that's my next project.
Cool.
Especially if the edge of the drawer is profiled, because then you can take that meat out of the center and put it back together. And
without disrupting
Right.
the profile.
right.
Yes.
I'm glad you understand what she's talking about.
It's hard to describe, but thank you for understanding.
Yeah.
So the drawer front broke in half?
I've broken a lot of things.
Yeah, it was really weird. I just went to
my
open
specialty.
it and broke in half.
That's
Your
why.
Herculean strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
drawer.
stay on your good side. I got nothing to report except that I went on vacation this past week to Glacier and Yellowstone. And those of you listening who haven't been to our Great Western National Parks and you're interested in building the architecture of the Great Lodges is worth the trip alone. So, and one of the coolest things about the Yellowstone Inn is you seldom go into commercial buildings with greatly sloping ceilings and walls that are out of whack, but this is a complete log structure, and it is fascinating to walk around this building with these domed floors and see the bent wood architectural elements and stuff. It is just totally awesome.
Yeah, national parks are the best. Did you only go there or other national parks too?
So we went to Glacier and Yellowstone.
Okay. Did you get the annual pass thing? Because we just did that too. And it was like, it's like, wow, this is surprisingly not expensive. And now I can go to any national park for the next year.
Yeah, I think if you go to like 2 or 3 parks, it pays. Well, at 3 parks, it probably pays for itself. I did not, because we didn't have any plans to go anywhere else, but I should have anyway, because I like supporting them, right?
That's how I felt about it.
Yeah. What do those cost?
It's like $120
Yeah, I
I
think it's
want.
120.
That's nothing.
Yeah. And otherwise it's $40 to get in or something. So
Yeah.
somewhere around there.
that
If you ride a motorcycle, it's cheaper.
Does that include camping too?
No, the
Okay,
campgrounds
that's
are.
separate.
I want to say ours was like $20 a night or 30 maybe. Once again, super good deal. And the architecture is amazing, and so are the,
Mountains.
the mountains. Yes. The bridges and the road work and stuff that was done by the Works Progress Administration in the 30s. It's cool to see all that stuff too.
Yeah, the history
Yes.
of it. Mhm.
Support national parks. Fine Homebuilding Podcast supports national parks.
Yes.
Maybe we should do a parks podcast. I bet
I'm
someone's
game.
doing that.
Do one show from every park.
I like it.
To get someone to pay for that.
Yeah.
We're looking for sponsors.
Jeff's eyes lit up too. Should we get to some questions?
Yeah, I guess so.
What do you think, Kiley?
People in the audience are so needy,
This is the best part,
So
hearing from people.
crotchety, Justin.
just
I had
kidding
no
around.
idea.
Tim from North Carolina writes, hey, FHB podcast folk. I have a porch/deck question for you. The covered front porch on my mom's house in North Carolina has a temporary plywood deck or floor on it. The previous owner had it covered with outdoor carpet. I love that look, right?
All right.
yeah.
Didn't we just talk with somebody about that?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mom had the worn out carpet and flooring torn up about a year ago and couldn't decide on how to replace it, so she just had plywood put back down. She's now tired of looking at the plywood and wants to do something different. So I'm going to tell you my plan and get your opinion. First, I was thinking about painting the existing plywood black, then putting composite fascia boards that are a ½ inch thick down on top of the painted plywood. I would fasten those with stainless steel finish nails. This would give the traditional porch look, and I wouldn't have to tear up the plywood. I know I would have to come up with a plan for hiding the edges of the plywood around the border, but that shouldn't be too bad. My solution would only raise the floor height by ½ inch, so that wouldn't interfere with the front door threshold. With plywood underneath, I'm not concerned about the ½ inch thick material deflecting. It's a covered porch, so it will see very little water, maybe during a windy rainstorm. Can you see any issues with this approach?
Where did he say he was?
In North Carolina.
Okay.
I don't understand the painting of the plywood. What's the point
It's
of
so
doing that?
it kind of blends in. You don't see it between the gaps in the porch boards
Sort of what I
and the flooring boards.
So are you reading that to be that there would be a gap, like he's going to make it look like decking?
Yes.
Because we said make it look like a porch, I assumed it meant tight.
Yeah,
like a tongue and
that's
groove
why I
porch
questioned-
boards.
I think he's talking about
paint.
leaving a slight gap because those boards are going to move with temperature, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. It's in the spirit of he's trying to see what he can get done in a weekend, kind of like, without having to drive back and forth or whatnot. But
I'm worried about how debris and water are going to get out of there, and it's going to rot.
the drying potential is not there. Also, PVC is not meant to be walked on like that. It's going to be
I
super
didn't know that.
slippery when it's wet.
Yeah, why did he choose
so they do make
fascia board?
skirting for the composite decking, right? That's ½ inch thick. Maybe
Yep.
that's the same material and it wouldn't be as slippery. But I agree, it's not made for that.
It's not
Why do you think he went with that idea or
just
was
because
thinking about
it's rot proof, available, thick. I
Okay.
mean, not that thick. He's looking to not. You can look how close that
it? It has
door
to do
is
the thickness,
to the.
probably, right?
He's got to rip up the plywood and put
Yeah.
down 3/4 material, whether it's deck boards or tongue and groove boards that are very traditionally porchy.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that you're going to have to cut plywood around those posts and things anyway. So how much harder is it to put down
Boards.
PT decking?
Yeah.
It's going to look a world's better. It's going to last. It's going to dry. And, you can put them down nice and tight and they'll dry out and leave a little gap and you'll be good to go.
That's what I'm thinking.
Especially if you're, thinking about stainless steel nails. I mean, you're sort of halfway there. Don't give up that close to the finish line.
And
of
if you
doing it
have
right.
to, do it in two visits, right? You do part of it by the door and then do another part later.
Right, work from the center out.
Work from the center out. On the subject, when you're laying out your deck boards, you want to consider like how wide the space is, the width of the deck boards. You don't want to be left with like a 3/4 or 1 inch piece at the end, or that you have to put somewhere. That is like, that is the dead giveaway. You're an amateur.
Yes. I look for it every time I go into any public restroom now. I'm like, was the tile guy good or bad?
They're terrible generally.
And now
Commercial
I'm going to
tile.
start noticing that.
Well, I wonder if it's sometimes just they're not getting paid to care about that for that job.
I believe that's probably the case. Yeah.
Especially when you're doing, 12 airports in a bathroom.
And there's so many competing elements.
12 bathrooms in an airport.
Competing elements like jogs in the way in, and you have to work around the layout with that. It's like,
right.
Don't do that, Tim, please.
Yeah, it's not going to last, and we're not trying to be snobby about it. It's just like I think you're going to regret it.
I think you're going to regret it.
And Patrick and I are all about cheap economical solutions.
I'm all about doing things one time.
Yeah, that's true.
That's like it's.
I like creative ways to save money, though.
I'd agree.
And this would not be
one to do
acceptable.
Yeah.
I like that he made mention of the porch design article that we did.
Yes.
Did you see that?
I took that out of the question because it was I'm trying to make these shorter because we've had some folks saying that they fall asleep when I'm reading.
But it was a design story, so I'm calling attention to it.
Well, please, and we'll put that on the podcast. So can you give us a synopsis of what that was about?
It was a sort of detailing, it was a design story, the particulars of porch design.
Okay.
But it got into a couple of the important connection points, right?
Cool. Paula from California says, "Hey guys, love the show. Thanks for all your hard work. My question is for Kiley specifically, but anyone who knows more about this than me is welcome to chime in. I'm in the middle of a complete overhaul of my home, right down to reframing walls, moving windows, inserting doors, and the like. Obviously, as I move things around, I'm keenly aware of concepts like flow, light, spatial arrangement, etc. Basically, I'm wrestling with questions of interior design. How do I make the best use of natural light in my rooms? How do I arrange things so that flow is optimized? How do I select finishes? I'm trying to produce a home that is warm and appealing. Sadly, I'm completely out of my range. I know that some spaces I've seen are simply captivating, the kind that make you want to curl up with a good book and while away a day. Other spaces are discordant and unsettling and make me want to run. I'm sophisticated enough to tell when I'm in a good room, but not sophisticated enough to know what makes it good. I'm looking for resources to teach me the fundamentals of good design, but when I look at formal interior decorating and design books, I find that the spaces they produce tend to be more toward the discordant and unsettling than warm and inviting. Can Kiley recommend some books, websites, magazines, or any other good resources to help?"
What do you got for us, Kiley? Save the day.
I do have some resources, but before I get to that, I would like to add a couple of things because he did touch on some of the basics, the lighting, the flow, and that type of thing. But I think there's something to design that people don't talk about enough, and I think that it's really important to creating the warm space that he's talking about. And that is finding your sense of space, your own personal sense of space, and your context. So, for instance, I'm a New Englander, and I really like the aesthetic, and I'm connected to the culture and the setting. So my house is full of dark stained furniture, deep earth tones, and antiques. And that speaks to this. It's appropriate for the setting. It speaks to me. People come to my place. They say,
when you say it speaks to you, it's what you like.
It's what I like, and it makes it a pleasure to work with, right? So my advice to him is to give some thought to the things that he's acquired over time that have meaning to him, right? So find ways to put those things together. And I'm thinking of the guy that I bought my house from. He's a carpenter, and he loved old hand tools. And so he put hand tools all over the beams. And it was a really strong design statement. It was particular to him. It was very masculine. It was very woodsy feeling. And it was what you need to kind of do to create the space that makes you feel good, right? So I think that's important. Balance, coordination, composition, those things all really matter.
To those of us who are potentially more tone deaf to design, can you explain briefly what you mean by those things?
Sure. So actually, I don't know, Jeff, I cited a few examples in photograph form that would help. So this is a good example of an orchestrated sort of vignette, right? There's a color that's been picked up throughout the space, blue, right? You might not catch
It's subtle.
It's subtle,
Yeah.
but it is what ties things together. There's also, if you look at all of the things that are displayed, they're very carefully displayed. That's composition, right? I guarantee that everything that was put there was given some thought. And that's a little innate, I mean, I'm a painter, so I know what composition works well. Asymmetry is really important, but relationships really matter too. And it is something like a fundamental, the book, one recommendation would be Fundamentals of Interior Design. It just lays out spatial relationships, what you're looking for, height, width, all of these things create composition.
Cool.
And matter. So did you have that little armchair scene there? I think that's a good, it evokes mood, right?
Ooh,
so this is
That's super New Englandy.
This is super New Englandy. I would say this says me because, I also really enjoy finding things, if you want to create real character in your space, you want to find things at, say, flea markets or salvage shops that, they're not usually very expensive.
Right.
My entire place is full of oil paintings that I got for $10, and they're gorgeous, right? So
Do you go to the Antiques Roadshow to see if they're valuable?
I don't get true antiques. I go to junky flea markets, like that lamp right there. I used to have something just like it. So that's a good example of something that's really well composed. It's warm. You want to be there. You want to read your book. It's just very well executed space.
Dig
And
it.
I think anybody could do that. But, he has to give thought to where he is, what speaks to him, what makes him feel good. He talked about finishes. People go straight to finishes. I don't think that's where to start.
That's the end.
That's like
Finishing.
Start paying attention to materials that make you feel good. Do you like, thick, warm rugs, or do you like bare bones? Are you more of a modernist? You like modern finishes, whatever. So I think you really need to figure out who you are, what you like, what speaks to you. I think that stuff doesn't get talked about enough. You want to optimize light. You keep things, the colors light and neutral, and furnishings away from windows, and minimal flow. There's an architectural term you guys are going to love called desire lines.
Oh,
Where
God.
do you want to go, right? What makes sense? What's comfortable? I've been in houses where I keep going the wrong way because the bathroom was probably not put in the right place.
The clues
The
are
clues are weird.
misleading.
Yeah. So you have some control over that. So I do have a couple of sites to recommend. Apartment Therapy, which I really like because it's modest.
I like that too.
It's
That's
super
cool.
modest.
It's a cool site.
Yeah. Remodelista, terrible name, but great site for the same reason. It's a little more obscure. Kinfolk, they do. It's a great resource for figuring out composition, what I'm talking about, how to create a nice little vignette that adds to the room.
Do you think that's something you can teach people?
I think if you start paying attention and thinking about it and you get your Fundamentals of Design book, yes. I do think that it requires a sort of an artistic sensitivity, but I don't think that people need to remain tone deaf to it.
Yeah.
Especially since he clearly values it. He wants to work on it, right? So I support you in that. There's also Styling with Salvage by Joanne Palmisano, which is fantastic for creating warm spaces using salvaged materials. Her books are great. She has a whole series of books. And then one last recommendation. It's a show on Netflix called Abstract, The Art of Design. And it's not just about interior design. The one episode is devoted to that. It just gets into what it takes to put together an effective design, whether it be graphic design,
What's that called
shoe
again? I
design.
gotta watch that.
It's really good. Abstract, The Art of Design. It's just very thought-provoking.
What do you got to say about this subject?
Justin's being silly because your house is a great example of a well-composed.
Yeah, it feels
good
comfortable. It feels
feeling.
comfortable.
It's sophisticated.
My style is, a lot of it is, my wife does a good job of making it look less and less like a college guy lives there every day. But I've always, there's a couple of things that always stuck in my head about design. And my mom used to be an interior designer years ago. And my brother's an architect. So I was always exposed to this stuff. But things that have helped me personally are strong, consistent horizontal lines when things get complicated. So taking the time to make the top of your casing align with the floating shelf that you want to put on the wall, and then have that line carry over to something having to do with the cabinet over here. So it feels
Spatial
like you're, if everything starts doing this crazy coastlining and bouncing up and down in different shapes, it feels like chaos, So
that's a good point.
Figuring out how to keep things calm. My mom was always a fan of sort of soft neutral colors in the room so that she could decorate with things.
Yep.
With
so
color.
So that when her tastes change, she could, and that was always a safe thing for her. She's pretty conservative that way. I mean, for me, it just sort of feels like trying to keep a consistent vibe from room to room. And I think so your advice of like looking around at what you're drawn to already and what you already have and going, you probably already have some pretty good signs of what you're into. What are the things you're flagging on Pinterest? What are the things you keep on? Is it like, industrial steampunk kind of stuff? Is it country? Is it like this beachy kind of feel that a lot of people like? Yeah. And you just kind of, you go with that or you pepper that in. And that's kind of.
I think people make the mistake of going to buy things that they like. And that's just not a good starting point.
Yeah.
You need to give some thought to what's going to create a space, not just decorate a space. Right. That's the difference between design and decorating.
I've always had trouble with the ability. I've always envied people that do like shop displays who can take a bunch of random things, put them together, and they look awesome. And I just look at that and I'm like, if I did that at home, it would look like I had a bunch of crap on the shelf.
This is what I had left.
Yeah. So that's an art that I don't know how to do. And I
don't know about that. But
I'm going to...
these are all good points, yeah.
I would offer one other thing, Paul, and a recommendation for material. A Pattern Language, which is published by Taunton, talks a lot about how to make spaces that are comfortable. One thing I've observed in my years of living is that people seem to gravitate to spaces with low ceilings. If you have a cozy room, people feel better in that than this space with soaring ceilings that you have this huge loft of space like a cathedral. It doesn't feel like home.
And sometimes you can create that with objects in the room. You can, create a little corral of furniture that feels like you're talking to each other around a fireplace and kind of create these little pockets. I think Sarah Suzanko was a big fan of those creating spaces within spaces, kind of a the not so big house.
Go to any cocktail party and you see where people congregate, and I guarantee is the place that is the smallest with the lowest ceiling.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I would also say that if you have the luxury of like interacting with the space as it's being built. Like my wife and I have had the greatest design successes when we've had the time to like sit in the space even long before it was completed with studs and sheathing and just like imagine how you would use it. And that's especially good for people, I think, who have trouble visualizing stuff on paper. If you can sit in the space and live in it.
And I would also caution, I mean, might just be a personal thing, you guys can disagree, but there's a lot of standard architectural dimensions for things, like the hallway should be this wide or this much room between the island and the cabinets, and don't make a shower less than this. If your house doesn't have room for those things, sometimes you just have to
go with it.
My shower is well below what an architectural standard would recommend, and I never think about it.
Right.
And I've lived in some very funky old houses, and I'm sure that none of that applies.
Yeah, you will adapt.
They have the most character.
Right.
So.
I mean, there's definitely situations where, don't make a humongous island where you're going to be bumping into each other and can't get past it. But, break rules. Just as long as you know what the rules are first, break them. That's always how I approach everything. Learn the rules, then you can break them.
And I would say nothing is nothing is irreversible. you can fix almost anything if you make a mistake. Hello, FHB podcast team. Greetings from Cincinnati, Ohio. My wife and I purchased a house back in November with a plan of a 3-month renovation time, but here we are in August, 10 months later, and we're still working on things. I don't know if that means he's moved in.
3 months? What were you thinking?
I know.
I know. But we all do that, right? Even pros do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He says he's moving on before he gets too depressed. The house is a simple 950 square foot single-story ranch on a crawl space. We increased the ceiling height by raising the ceiling joist, so now there's a section of flat ceiling in the center and sloping ceilings along the eave walls. Do you guys get that? So we moved up the roof plane, but that left some sloping ceilings above the walls. We had a new roof put on almost immediately after buying the place. I'm planning to blow in lots of loose fill cellulose into the attic post drywall. However, there are a few can lights installed in the sloping ceiling and living room kitchen spaces. I'm worried I won't be able to blow insulation past these cans. I think installing 6-inch fiberglass bats in the rafter bays with the cans before drywall may be my best bet. Feel free to suggest another idea if this is misguided. So there's another part of this question, but let's talk about putting can lights in insulated ceilings.
Okay.
Don't you guys always say don't put can lights? And
Yeah, it's like a
chimney.
Yeah, it's like communicating. The best way to communicate your indoor space with your outdoors.
They're always a
tunnel.
problem. They're always a problem.
Yeah, don't do it.
I mean, I have them in my house. I didn't do it, but I can tell you that the snow melts above them immediately because even if they're off, right? It's just a huge thermal hole. It's a hole.
Yep.
That's where insulation is not.
Yes. I would say, how desperately do you need lights in that slope ceiling?
I say put the freaking surface-mounted ones that are available that look just like a can light.
Aren't they already in? Or is he adding them?
He is, and he sent us a photo, and he's got the can lights roughed into the ceiling.
Oh, okay.
You can probably still return those.
Take them out, put a regular junction box in there, and use these Lithonia products.
I have those on my porch, that kind of thing, the LED ones.
Yeah.
They're awesome. The only hassle there, which is if one goes out, and one of mine did, you're replacing the whole fixture. And it becomes do they still make that same model? And
is it going to be the same color as the other ones?
There's trade-offs.
Yeah.
How long did it last?
It seemed like it was a fluke.
Oh, okay.
Like it just went bad because the other ones are fine because it went out pretty quick, like within months.
I'll put a
Still
link.
haven't changed it, by the way.
Who did?
I still haven't changed it.
I'll put a link to the product I found on the on our podcast page that I've heard people really like because of its color and durability. Apparently, the early versions of some of these were kind of flimsy, so this was a good one. And it's Lightalier, I believe, slim surface LED. But that solves that problem elegantly, and you don't have this. Now you don't have the insulation problem, also, right? So don't do that. Okay. Next part is, this brings me to roof ventilation. My roof has a ridge vent for 60 to 75% of the ridge and gable vents on either side near the peak of the roof. I guess he's saying on the gable ends he has gable vents. I discovered after gutting everything that there are no soffit vents. I originally planned on cutting 2 3-inch holes to create soffit vents along with the requisite baffles in each bay. However, the overhangs on the front and back of the house were constructed as an addition and therefore extend below the interior ceiling plane. So he has an applied overhang, right? So that makes it so he can't drill through this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The top 2x4 ledger of these overhangs matches up with a bit of the plank siding just above my top plates.
We have photos of this, Jeff? We don't have shots
I'm
of this?
sorry, we do not. Okay,
This is a tough one to picture.
So he's got an applied overhang and board sheathing going up, and there's just enough room to drill holes without hitting the roof overhang and the ledger for the soffits.
So is this essentially... Okay.
Do you understand?
I gotcha.
So there's a little gap of sheathing that's about 1 inch tall, and he could drill 1-inch holes there.
Yep.
Okay. Using Owens Corning's ventilation calculator recommends I have about 440 square inches of soffit ventilation, or at a minimum 220 square inches. Given 60 joist bays, I would need to drill between 10 and 5 1-inch holes in each bay. And yes, I am an engineer. So I did the math check, and if you take 440 square inches and divide it by 60, that tells you that you need approximately 7.3 inches per bay, or about 10 holes at the max, or at the minimum 5. So I see no problem with that. He says drilling is tricky due to various obstacles, but I think my best option is to drill the 5 to 10 holes in each bay. So my complete solution is drill the holes above the top plate, install ventilation baffles, use fiberglass bats below the cans in the slope ceiling, and blow in insulation for the rest. Any other ideas I could consider? If there is a viable solution that didn't involve drilling all these holes, I'm all ears. As this project has dragged on, budget is obviously fairly tight, and replacing the roof with outsulation is a non-starter. After spending every spare moment for 9 months, my main concern is longevity, i.e. I don't want rotting roof sheathing, even at the slight even at the cost of a slight energy efficiency hit. I do plan to air seal the can lights and other ceiling plane penetrations. Bam. What do you think?
I think I would not go that route.
What do you say? You going to spray foam it?
Well, I don't like to go right to the spray foam solution. I feel like it's a little heavy-handed sometimes. It does a great job, and it would solve his problem in this case very nicely.
Yep. What are you going to do? Unvented?
Yeah, well, another option is you could do roof deck venting. You know, you could put the... Where did he say he was? Did he say? Oh, I never know where anybody is. Cincinnati. He's fine in Cincinnati, right?
It's pretty temperate.
He could get away with roof vents there on top. You know, they have basically hidden roof vents that integrate with your roof shingles. So you cut through the top of your roof deck and get your ventilation that way instead of down through the soffit or up through the soffit. So that's one option. So
to paraphrase, you cut a little slit between the fascia board and the roof sheathing, right?
Or sometimes higher up.
In the roof sheathing sometimes.
Yep.
Okay. And then you put this vent like fiberglass material that's plastic, and it prevents bugs and rodents from getting in there.
Right. So we're talking about actually probably
two different
things. One is like a fascia or like an eave vent. So like it looks like drip edge and everything, but it's actually a vent. And the other one is it's up on the roof deck, like maybe 2 feet up or whatever it might be.
Do you know who makes that particular product?
I think that CoraVent might make the rooftop one at least. We have an article on venting an old tricky roof.
Tricking a roof to vent.
Yeah. I think I'm having problems
Same
today.
thing.
That's the better story. Can we do that one?
Tricking an old venti roof. So we can stick a link to that. This one was like an old house that had, a detailed cornice, and they needed.
Can we look at that photo again, Jeff?
Yeah.
So the product I picked out is similar to what you're describing, and I picked out an air vent vented drip edge, which is what you described.
Yes. Yeah.
His roof slope is pretty shallow, right?
Yes.
So we need to keep in mind that roof venting on low slope roofs doesn't work very good generally.
Yes.
So I would be tempted, and I know this is against code in many instances, and you have to educate your inspector sometimes.
Here we go.
Don't vent it, because it's not going to work anyway.
What would you use for insulation then?
I would use dense pack cellulose.
He's making me nervous with his cellulose talk because of the way he's referring to doing loose fill in the attic and then down the rafters.
Exactly. So there's no way he's going to be able to dense pack the rafter base with stuff let's call it consumer equipment, right?
Yes.
So you're going to need a pro to dense pack that, and you can dense pack cellulose or fiberglass or whatever. And my guess is they could probably work around the can lights with the right nozzle.
And I guess they could probably dense pack it from the attic, potentially, if there's enough room up there to walk around.
Alternatively, they could put up the insul netting and do it before the drywall goes up.
Right, or put the drywall up, poke holes in it, whatever it.
Now, folks listening are going to tell me that this is a code violation and you need to have vent chutes above fibrous insulation, right?
Yes.
And so you can write about that, but we know that.
Yes. This falls under the
off-label.
Well, not only that, but like there's a lot of successful instances of dense pack cellulose in unvented roofs.
Yes. And I think the way it works is because it has great ability to seasonally distribute moisture. And you need an airtight ceiling. That's the other thing that's key to this, to successfully dense packing without ventilation base.
So last week I was at Building Science Summer Camp with at Building Science Corp in Massachusetts, and Joe Stiebrick, who's the owner of that company, has all these buildings on his property that he tends to build them as sort of
test facilities.
Yeah, he tries different things, and he does it kind of in the so that he can make mistakes or find things that have gone wrong without recommending it to people. But he has this one little kind of structure on the back of his property that was new to me. I hadn't seen it before, where the ceiling was still open. It was cathedral ceiling, and they had every other rafter bay was a different way to do.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Was a different way to do a unvented cathedral ceiling. And I'm not sure if they're still working on it or if already kind of wrapped it up, but I know Brian Ponfillo is talking to them, and hopefully we're going to have something in the works where we can share some insights into
how's it working,
what works and what doesn't. And, they're testing for moisture, and
that's really cool.
It was really cool.
That's really cool.
And I want to say that cellulose was kind of the control in there, or maybe it was a flash coat with cellulose,
Right.
How many different systems was he testing?
I don't know. I mean, this was only me looking and trying. I was trying to figure out what are they doing here.
Right.
Was it more than a few?
It was several.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
There were some
What a great idea.
There were some membranes I'd never heard of before.
So these are supposed to be vapor retarding?
That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
Is they were trying to either create vapor open setups, or maybe they were all vapor open.
Huh.
I don't know.
So in support of my advocating to dense pack the slope ceiling, Dan Colbert in Maine and Ben Bogey of the same company have been monitoring these dense packed unventilated roofs for years now, and they don't have a problem. And Maine's climate is much harder to deal with than Cincinnati. So if you can convince an installer to do that and you're a building inspector, boy, I would say that's the way to go.
Yeah, and I know that walls are different than roofs, and anybody can cringe listening to this, but I mean, we dense pack walls without worrying about that all the time. I don't know.
I would say, and if you can't afford to dense pack, and it's going to cost more than bats, is then to buy mineral wool, push it tight to the roof sheathing, which once again, you can write in, folks, that is a code violation, but make sure your ceiling is extremely airtight and there's no place for moisture to come unless you have leaks in the ceiling envelope and especially a wet crawl space, right? If you have leaks in the crawl space ceiling and they reach the way to the roof, that's when you really get rotted sheathing. Roofs themselves, it's tough to screw up because they're hot, they dry. That's the point that building scientists always make, is that hot things don't stay wet, so the likelihood of problems is greatly reduced.
Unless you have can lights.
Can lights in a wet basement. Wet basement is really the Achilles heel. So this one is to you.
Oh, that's right. You want me to read it, right?
Well, it didn't send it to me.
It says your name right on it.
All right. Hi, Kiley.
Hi.
I've worked as a self-employed residential remodeling contractor in Anchorage, Alaska, off and on for the last 6 years. I'm also a dedicated Fine Homebuilding subscriber and podcast listener. As a female in the industry, I've really appreciated hearing your voice and perspective on the show. Thank you. Thank you. My partner and I just purchased a ranch built in 1957. Having moved from Chicago, we appreciate that the architecture in Anchorage leaves much to be desired. But we'll do the best we can with the remodel, and it will be home. I've attached the building inspection so you can see some pics. Our first phase of remodeling would be the half bath and the bedrooms. We'll do this work before we move in. Some months down the road, we'll do some structural work to enlarge the full bath and open up and remodel the kitchen. That will be the big phase. I'm writing because I've been scouring books at the library to come up with a trim package as we start work on the bedrooms, but I haven't found any resources that thrill me or a concept that's stuck. I love to build, but I'm not a designer, so I just want someone to tell me what to do. I want a builder to do the things that I tell them to do. Since the house is a simple ranch and because of my own tastes, I'd like to stay away from any ornate profiles, maybe craftsmen. And since I'm a carpenter by trade, I'd like the profile to be simple enough that I can mill it myself, even if I end up buying it off the shelf. I guess I'd like the ultimate product to be simple in design, but with obvious attention paid to detail in its execution. Well said. And I want the design to honor the original ranch concept with an eye toward contemporary, since we'll remodel the whole house. My plan is to use finger-jointed white pine. I've been looking at Pinterest and houses, but A, I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and B, there's a lot of crap DIY out there. I'd be grateful for any input on potential trim ideas or resources for places to look or people to talk to. Thanks very much for all your time and work. Chantal.
That's fun. Well,
So-
can I just say congratulations to them on buying the house?
Yeah, it's exciting. And you had some points you wanted to make about the house itself.
Patrick
based
wants
on
them to use 2 1/4
Ranch casing?
ranch casing
Well, this is
No, I don't. I was going to say something completely different.
and clamshell baseboard.
But I just wanted to make sure that they weren't getting the horse before the cart. They're talking about trim details, and there were some pretty serious things on their inspection report that I would want to.
Oh, I didn't even look at the photos.
So I would want to have those things addressed first. And if they want details on what I think is the triage list, I'm happy to do that. But we won't waste the time on the question because
Oh,
that's
man.
My guess is if she's a builder, she's aware of those things.
Yeah, and she didn't say that she needed help with that stuff,
Right,
but I just
right.
wanted to make sure that they weren't forgetting that other stuff that is more life-threatening.
So this is definitely outside my wheelhouse, specking for construction details. But
it's design.
I did reach out to, architects that I know. Well, my thinking was that it's a ranch house, and she says that their tastes run toward the
Simple.
contemporary. Right?
And simple.
So I reached out to architects who do a lot of mid-century modern design, and that seemed to make sense to me.
Especially given the era of the house, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the perfect era for this. So Bruce Wentworth is a designer in the D.C. area, and he sent me a link to the catalog from Smoot Lumber Molding, which I know is
Did you make that up?
It's a local source for him, but I also think it's just really rich in ideas.
Neat.
So and
Right.
it's all drawn out, and it's probably what she's been looking at, but maybe it will be something she hasn't seen before. I don't know.
Cool.
So I also go to his site a lot because there's a lot of really good information on his site. So I'll provide the link for that too. He did recommend the clamshell ranch base.
Did
but
he?
He did.
Just because of the period of the house?
Or not, yeah, the casing.
Come on.
But he also, and I thought this was a better choice. I don't know if you guys would agree or not, but the sanitary casing, and he offered four different
I don't know what that
dimensions.
is. Do you know what that is? Justin's cheating.
I know what a sanitary drain is. Sanitary teeth. What,
And
sanitary casing? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he recommended that you use the largest.
Oh,
He-
yeah.
He provided.
it?
It's pretty simple.
It's just it's like the one by with the slightly rounded edges.
East edges, flat
Yeah,
casing.
yes, yeah.
Why can't they say that?
I think that is actually what it's called. Even like in the
Sanitary?
yeah.
I sold millwork for a number of years, and I don't remember ever having someone come in and ask for that.
Well, nobody asks for that. But I said, did you sell Brosco or would you?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. So the Brosco catalog is now the same as just about everyone else's molding catalog. So
That's what-
WM numbers are universal.
That's what made it so good. Yeah.
So.
I still like Brosco though.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So
Can I
that's your
offer a
recommendation.
suggestion?
Sure.
She wants to make this herself, which she's probably not going to do with clamshell, right? But a nice, simple beaded casing, right? And you can make that with a small router, right?
Yep.
You can even like do it on sawhorses if you have to.
Yep.
And that's a nice, simple, clean look that you can make yourself. And if you take the time to do the miters and do it really good, it's the execution of good carpentry that you were seeking, I think.
Yeah. Another thing could be I'm drawing a blank on the name. What is the one we just did with Gary Katz?
I don't know either.
And with a back band?
No, it was a beaded casing, but it was
With jack miters.
Jack miter, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are cool. I mean, a little more complicated, but you can jig up, and they're easy to make production style if you do.
And if you have friends who are also into carpentry, they'll be dazzled by your casing detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's super simple, but it's a nice way to do that. It's basically what Patrick is saying with miters, except this is the traditional way to do it so that it is less likely to open up. And
So only the bead part is mitered, and it's a flat joint between the head and side casings, right?
Yeah.
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 So I also like just a normal wider flat casing as the head and narrower sides, like kind
Yes.
of a pediment arrangement.
Yep.
And you can do that with beads with or without beads.
craftsman style, I've done probably the most of that, or some variation of craftsman style, because you can do a lot with that.
I've seen like flat casing and then with an applied band on it too, which I think is pretty cool, but it's probably, if you like simple stuff, that might be a little gaudy.
So another architect sent in something that I've just been trying to get my head around. He sent a sketch of it. I mean, it's not that complicated. I wanted to see what you guys had to say about it too. He said that the interior trim on mid-century modern windows are typically one by wood running perpendicular to the wall, not laid flat on it. Can you picture that?
What? Blade.
Do you have that sketch, Jet? Put it in there.
I didn't put that in, I
Whereas
guess.
the door is a one by that is laid flat against the wall.
Okay. We'll put that in the updated podcast
And the
page.
baseboard should be square cut with a thin piece of wood, no more than a 1/2 inch thick, 2 or 3 inches tall. And if you do crown molding, it should be the baseboard but smaller. And then I did come across something that he had these dimensions and things that he would use, but it sounds maybe a little bit more bare bones than she wants to go with. There's that.
So we'll put that rendering on the podcast page.
Also, there is this photograph. This is a cool idea that it goes beyond trim, but it's kind of like a modern twist on wainscoting. And I thought that somebody, she might appreciate it. It's by Don Lococo.
We don't have that photo.
Put it in there.
I didn't change it. I didn't change the.
Well, we'll put it on the podcast page.
I didn't change the slideshow later in the day.
There yesterday, Patrick.
Oh my God!
See, now who's crotchety? I've warmed up.
This happens
to her photos for some reason.
Anyway, that was a cool detail. He took plywood and scored it asymmetrically and used it sort of went straight to the floor.
As paneling?
And paneling.
Cool.
It's cool. It's very cool. I thought it might speak to her.
What do you think about the age of the house? It's you got to be simple, right? The details are.
You can do a lot with a ranch though, because it sort of doesn't have a style.
Well, I craftsman in a ranch that she wants to make more contemporary.
That bothers you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, I don't mean craftsman, truly craftsman. I mean the craftsman arrangement of what Patrick's describing with the verticals, with the pediment across the top and overlapping a little bit.
That seems fancy to me.
That's used everything from simple to fancy, depending on how you want to dress it up. Even it could be modern looking too.
I guess I was thinking more modern.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of people do super modern where the baseboard, everything is the same. Baseboard miters into the casing, and that goes across and back down and into the baseboard.
And these things are all the same thickness.
It's all the same.
Oh, that would be so hard to do, right? I mean, there's a reason that your casing is always thicker than your base, right?
Yeah.
Is because nothing ever lines up.
And they're thin, right?
3/4.
Yeah. Or not thin, rather.
I think she is ideal.
Oh, yeah, like 2.5, 3, something like that.
We should convince Chantel to do that reglet molding.
Yes.
Right?
You really want to regret your life.
So we did a story recently with Joe Militia, right? And reglet molding, if those of you who aren't familiar, uses these metal trims on the drywall layer to recess the casing or the baseboard, and it's all the rage in modern design right now, and it makes carpenters like pull the hair out of their head.
It changes a lot of the order of things that we're used to, and kind of creates nebulous who's responsible for this questions. Is the drywall guy, is it the trim guy, is it?
So he ends up installing what amounts to drywall molding, right, as part of his trim process, and then he has to go back and install the wood on top of it. So it does screw things up, I'm sure.
And I'm sure that's going to be a popular callback item if it cracks.
So
it's very visible.
If you have to do that or are interested, you should read this article because he's figured out a way to keep it from falling apart.
Right. Do you like that look?
I think it's awesome. I wouldn't want to have to do it. I would do it on my own house because if it started cracking and falling apart, I would just rip it out and do it again. But to do it for a client, I would be hesitant.
It feels like it's not at all new. Like commercials probably been doing it for decades.
It looks commercial to me.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
And that's where it came from.
Feels cold.
Yeah, well, it's modern.
So I'm told that those original details were made to deal with huge expanses of drywall in airports and other commercial buildings, right? Because the materials behind them move more than the drywall, so you need some place to hide the movement.
They're expansion gaps.
It's expansion gaps like you'd have in a bridge or anything else big.
That's interesting.
Have you ever had to do a tile floor that was big enough to require expansion gaps?
Probably. I should have.
That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it, too. Yeah. I think those numbers would probably be shocking to people how
little the space has to be.
Yeah, before you have to put gaps in for it to not crack.
Does it have to be just a caulk joint
too, right?
Yes.
I think there's little moldings you can use too.
So instead of grout, you either use this molding or you put caulk in the.
I don't know. I've never done one.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe someone will write.
I'm going to keep on going on with my crack prone lifestyle.
Careful when you say that too.
Yeah, I know.
So we got one more thing. I want to thank my Facebook friends for alerting me to this. I found this piece in the New York Post that describes a remodeling project where these folks found thousands of dollars worth of old cans and bottles.
Oh, that picture you have.
They were stuck in a porch column, I believe, and it amounts to
drunk.
thousands of dollars of stuff, apparently. So if those of you who are doing remodeling projects, look around for those old cans and bottles that your predecessors tucked away.
I think you should also call on the audience to share the coolest things you found during remodeling projects.
I can do that right now.
I mean,
full skeleton.
I want to hear what the audience has.
Yes, me too.
I mean, I've certainly got a few.
We found thousands of dollars in a Habitat chimney one time. A volunteer did, and he turned it over.
My brother found a couple grand under the stair runner in his house when he bought it, and it was right at that period of time where like the remodel was getting a little out of hand. And, like, it was like, thank God.
Did he tell his wife?
Yeah. Good. Well, but then you don't think about this is the reaction they had in him is where else is money hidden?
Sure.
And then like he
tore his house apart.
Right.
Started to get a little crazy.
I love that these were hidden in a column.
Isn't that
you just
funny?
picture that.
Drop it right in there.
It's not hidden. It's garbage. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on where I found old liquor bottles in the basement. They are always there. These houses in Pittsburgh, I don't know if these guys were hiding from their wives down there and tucking away their liquor bottles, but every house had them.
And every remodeler's got the story about the used razor blades from the vanity cabinet, or, the bathroom cabinet. So it has to be more. It has to be more special than that when you're sending us a note.
Yeah, if it's a stack of old razor blades, we don't care. What's the best thing you found?
I like to find I love the old newspaper stuff when people stick that in there for whatever reason.
Like in the insulation?
Yeah, I found some carpenter's tool. Like I found a really nice nail punch, this big heavy
Someone
one.
dropped it?
Yeah, I must have dropped it during in a wall cavity. And old products, like in remodeling the garage, I found like an old windshield wiper replacement blade box, and like just the vintage writing on all that's cool for me. I like that stuff. But not like, I found a ruby or something, It's just like old crap that I think is cool.
That's what I found.
Yeah.
Too. I've heard of people finding guns and stuff, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Justin, Kylan.
Every time.
I got to do this again because I didn't put Jeff in here either, and that's what screwed me up.
Do we have to start the whole podcast over?
Yep. From the beginning. Ready? Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Justin, Kiley, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast, and be sure to sign up for the summit before the registration closes.
Yes, sir.